greed and loss and love. Parang you're always at the edge of your seat. Parang it always gives you a feeling that something big is about to happen. I love books and I read a lot. This year I made a personal goal to read one book per week. And in this series, I will share with you some of the books that made quite an impression on me. I hope you enjoy this. So here's another book I'm excited to share with you. It is called The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. This is published just this year, 2020, so it's kind of really fresh. And I'm really excited about this one. But you know what? I'm really having not an easy time describing it, because it's really quite hard to describe. Why? Because it is such for me, it's such an unconventional way of telling a story. The way the author wrote the story is unconventional, but in that sense, it is also quite captivating. Kasi nga, it's different, right? It's not your normal narrative wherein there's a start, a middle, and an end. If I may borrow one of the reviews that I read about the book, this person, I'm sorry, I forgot the name, but the person said that The Glass Hotel doesn't have endings, it has interruptions. And I love that. I love that description because it is exactly that. The Glass Hotel centers around a girl named or called Vincent, and she has a brother named Paul. Vincent is a strange girl. She tries to very hard to kind of find her way in life, and she's socially awkward, kind of a solitary loner person, but she's really also very smart. She struggles with finding her place in the world, in society, in a community. So she kind of jumps from one place to the next and just trying to figure out where and how does she fit in. And she's strange in that sense. Her brother is another completely separate story. Of course, them being siblings, they are kind of tethered to one another. And there are a lot of other characters, a lot of other very important characters in the story, but the way the story is told, it is told from, it's like listening to different snippets of stories from different people. And it almost feels like, when you're reading the book, it almost feels like everything is unrelated. It's like jumping from one to the next without, without really connecting anything. But in the grander scheme of things, they are actually unified by a big theme. The major themes of the book is really quite heavy. It's not it's quite a heavy read in a sense that technically it is an easy read, but the feeling of the book, the feeling of the story, it's really quite heavy and dark. It's about greed and loss and love, and there's a portion about death and drugs and family issues, and all of those all of those kind of dark, heavy topics, right? The way I described this book initially was that it gives you a feeling of suspense all throughout the story, but not really. Parang you're always at the edge of your seat. Parang it always gives you a feeling that something big is about to happen. And then it does. Something big happens. But then when it does happen, when it finally happened, it is told in such a way that it is so subtle and so almost commonplace that it just sneaks up on you out of nowhere, and then suddenly that's it. Suddenly it's done. So it's a very surprising way of telling the story. And that's what I loved about it. It is full of surprises, and it gives you that feeling of dread from start to finish. It almost feels like it almost feels like hopeless the whole time. You feel hopeless the whole time. But at the same time, you want to find out what happens next, and you want to find out if ever there's going to be a better turnout of events, for example. It's really quite difficult to explain, other than it's a really good book and it's a really good read. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it almost feels like random, unrelated events. But all of it ties very nicely and very tightly at the end of the story, and it gives you that really satisfying payoff at the last few chapters of the book. But I do have to agree with that book review that I read, when he said that, the glass hotel does not have endings, it has interruptions. And it is that it really, when you read it, it really feels like each chapter is being interrupted by something else that is not related, and then you get to read it after 3 5 chapters later. It will relate back to that chapter, and then suddenly you will realize, it makes sense after all, and then it will give you that really satisfying payoff. It's great that way. Technically, the way it's written, it is quite captivating, it's fascinating, it will hook you. It's not the easiest of topics. The story itself, the subject matter itself, and the tone of the book is quite dark and sinister and mysterious, and half the time you're not exactly sure, like, what are you following here? Well, what's the, where's the climax? What's happening? So it's fascinating in that sense. I would recommend this book if you're into that. If you're into psychological fiction, mystery slash psychological fiction genre. It's really quite captivating. It's fascinating to read. Very interesting read. Mahirap ako i-describe. Basta maganda siya. If you're into psychological fiction and mystery and thriller and a little, dark, a little sinister, a little mysterious type genre, then I think this is for you. This is not a murder mystery, okay? Just to be clear, it's not a murder mystery. It has no gore, nothing like that. It feels like a quiet type of thriller. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the book. After putting down the book, it kind of lingers with you, and it it's difficult. Again, it's difficult to pinpoint what it is exactly about the book, but it lingers. It stays with you, and you kind of think about it, and you kind of find it. All of it, the whole thing is strange, but at the same time, stays. So if you're in the mood for that, or if you want to try something different, something new, something a little more mysterious, something a little darker than usual, I think you'll like this. I really did enjoy it. So yeah, don't worry, it's not a horror. No, it's not a horror genre, not at all. But it is very fascinating. It's sinister, but it's really cool. So I hope you enjoy this. If you do decide to read it, I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So yeah, there you have it. But I've heard great things about it. Hindi ako nakamute.